Most expectant mothers are very careful during their pregnancies. There is, however, some concern that the developing brain of a fetus might be at risk if the woman takes certain commonly prescribed drugs. Psychologist Dan Cerutti has been looking at one class of drugs, antidepressants. And while he obviously doesn't expose a human fetus to an antidepressant, he does study both the embryonic and adult stage of fish. Fish whose genetic makeup is remarkably similar to our own. The fish is a zebrafish, and the drug being studied is Prozac.
And the way that we do that is we breed some zebrafish, and within days of their fertilization, their brains are developing. And that's the point at which we introduce the Prozac into the water. Prozac's water soluble, so you can actually just put it in there, mix it up in their water, and what they do is they absorb it through their gills and they get a dose.
Only randomly selected embryos are exposed to Prozac, but since Cerutti will test the fish later as adults, he can't know which ones get a dose.
My fellow experimenters know that, but I don't.
Cerutti has learned that the brain neurons responsible for transmitting serotonin are affected by this brief exposure to Prozac.
It gets washed out of their system pretty quickly, but we know that once it binds in the receptors in the brain, it alters the way that the serotonergic system, these special neurotransmitters that are involved in memory and cognition, get wired.
As they develop into adults, the Prozac-treated fish look normal and eat, swim, and reproduce normally.
The question is, does this affect its memory and cognition? That's the question that we want to answer for humans as well. We want to know if someone who's exposed in utero, perhaps, to a drug like an antidepressant will have changes in the brain that will be apparent as an adult. And if that's the case, we have an important story to tell people.
But do fish really have memory?
You might think that fish don't have memory. They actually have great memories. We know this for a fact.
And here's how the memory is tested.
What I've just done is to start a study in which we're looking at the ability of the fish to ignore a flashing object. And so now in a moment you'll see this a large flash come up on the screen, and the fish instinctively recoil from that. They swim away from it as though it was a predator.
A computer tracking the image of the fish shows them relatively motionless before the black stimulus, and then, once the large stimulus appears, swimming frantically to avoid it.
But you can see them going nuts.
Every 10 seconds, the stimulus reappears. A camera mounted directly above the bowls picks up this video of the fish. Notice that now some of the fish seem unaffected by the stimulus.
They're remembering that the first stimulus didn't hurt them, so this one probably won't hurt them either. And so they should respond less. And we call that response decline habituation.
And the question becomes,
do the Prozac-exposed fish show the same habituation? Because habituation is a very, very good index of memory.
Some of the fish just do not seem able to learn to ignore the stimulus.
One thing that we expect to find is that compounds like Prozac, which we know are detrimental to neural function, will inhibit or will impede the ability of organisms like the zebrafish to learn these very simple problems like ignoring a stimuli. And if they do, that will have very large implications for giving a drug like this to an organism whose brain is developing, for example, like a small child.
In adult humans, Prozac has sometimes been shown to reduce cognitive functioning.
There has been a great deal of cognitive testing of people with Prozac, and so we know that, in fact, Prozac disrupts memory and cognition pretty significantly. So, in a sense, if you're taking Prozac, you're going to be a little bit dumber. Not a lot, but a little bit, enough that it's detectable.
But as of yet, the verdict is not in on whether pregnant women should avoid antidepressants.
Well, I can't really say. We just don't have enough evidence. But definitely, I would say that anything which has a proven effect on the development of the nervous system is something that should be avoided.